Hi, good evening. Welcome to the regular meeting of the Larkspur City Council for June 17, 2015. It is now 6:32 p.m. Start the meeting with a roll call, please.
Councilmember Haroff?
Here.
Councilmember Morrison?
Here.
Councilmember Hilmer?
Here.
Vice Mayor Waive?
Here.
And Mayor Chu.
Here, thank you. Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First, where's Mike?
Damn it.
Okay.
Now I have to smell it coming out.
I know. I was just thinking.
Okay. The first item on our agenda tonight is recognition for our retiring superintendent, Mike Myers from Public Works. It's kind of a, as we always say when we have a longtime employee, a bittersweet moment. We've always appreciated the literally decades of service that he's provided us, and he's basically become family in this community. I know when I started here in Larkspur, I moved here in '88 from Corte Madera, and it was right after Mike had started with the city too, and was always really helpful to residents in Baltimore Park and as well as other neighborhoods. So he's here tonight. We had a little party for him, an open house down at Public Works from 4 to 6, which is what we're just coming back up from. But what I would like to do is to read a proclamation of the Larkspur City Council honoring Mike retiring from Public Works as a superintendent and recognizing him for his years of service and a job well done. So, whereas Mike Myers assumed the position of maintenance worker for the City of Larkspur on January 6, 1987, whereas Mike was permanently appointed to the position of Public Works Superintendent on August 1st, 1992, and has endured the challenges of working under 3 Public Works directors. Let's see, I think at least 2 are here. I didn't see Mike. And whereas Mike has served and cared for the community of Larkspur for the last 28 years, responding to emergencies, landslides, floods, fallen trees, preparing the city for the annual 4th of July celebration, assisted with capital improvement projects, including the redevelopment of Magnolia Avenue, planning and construction of the new corporation yard. Whereas Mike directly oversaw the public works operations and maintenance staff and scheduled park, street, and facilities maintenance activities that allowed fields and facilities to remain operational for the community of the city of Larkspur. Whereas Mike has built relationships throughout the community of Larkspur and the surrounding cities, he has brought a kind smile, helping hand, and spirit of cooperation to all that he has done here in Larkspur. Whereas Mike is responsive and has had a hard time saying no to anybody in need, he has risen to the challenge even during tough times. When the city budget required a cutback of forces, he managed to keep fields maintained and facilities open for public use. And whereas Mike Myers established the role of official rain gauge monitor and efficiently, accurately, and with a smile reported weekly amidst the good-natured teasing that resulted from his coworkers on the management staff. Mike Myers will be remembered for his smile, his charm, and his ability to bring comfort to the citizens of Larkspur, knowing that he would be there to respond to any emergency, no matter how large or small. Now therefore be it proclaimed that the Larkspur City Council wishes Mike a happy, healthy retirement and many fun-filled days with his family and friends, and proclaims June 17, 2015 as Mike Myers Day in the city of Larkspur. Sorry, forgot to sign it.
A long time ago, what started as a job became an honor and a privilege to work with the city of Larkspur. And I thank you for this recognition, especially my
Hey, Mike, I'm going to miss seeing you out there fixing the streets or whatever needs to be fixed or maintained. And you always had a smile on your face, and people always seem to stop and talk with you. And you always found the time to greet them and inform them what's going on. So you are really going to be missed, especially your smile. So thanks for all you've done for Larkspur and for the staff, city staff, and council.
I'm Mary Grace Houlihan. I'm the current Public Works Director, and Hamid Shamspour right here is my predecessor as Public Works Director. And I'll invite Hamid to say any words he wishes. I would like to thank Mike just from the bottom of my heart. He helped make it possible for me to understand where things were in Larkspur, even things maybe I didn't want to see. He would come to me and say, Mary Grace, I have something to show you. And after the third or fourth time, I started asking, okay, wait a minute, do I want to see this? But he has been my right arm for the last 2.5 years, and I will tell you, he will be sorely, sorely missed in Public Works. He is what I consider, after 28 years of being here, truly a Larkspurian, and really believes in this town, and really is the full definition of what a public servant is. And thank you, Mike, for all you've done. I would like to pass this on to you. This is a little memory book that staff has prepared with some photos and some words of thanks. So
Thank you, Mary Grace.
You've just done so much. Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, Dan, city manager, Mary Grace, Mike, the members of the audience. I'm Hamid Shamspour. I was the director of public works and city engineer in the city of Larkspur for 18 years, and worked with Mike very closely during those 18 years. And pretty much the proclamations summarized Mike's career and abilities and what he has meant to the city of Larkspur. The city of Larkspur is such a special place. I personally spent best years of my life, and I always say there's a part of my heart on every street light, on every traffic signal, on the corner of every park, and on sidewalks and streets and catch basins and everything else in the city of Larkspur. I've left a little bit of bike lanes, of course. How can I forget the bike lanes? Of course, my heart is in the bike lanes too, of course. Just briefly, something about a little story I can share with you. Everybody knows what a hardworking and dedicated employee Mike is and has been. And we were, and I know still are, a small staff, a lot of responsibilities, a lot of work. So as a result, we end up working a lot of long hours. So I used to work till very late, and sometimes on the way home, I would just stick my head in the courtyard, and I see the lights still on, and I go in there and look, Mike's still there. Mike, it's so late, I'm leaving late, and you're still here. I said, yeah, I'm working on this report, I'm working on that report. So he was dedicated, and what I told him, that he was like married to his job. I said, Mike, I and the city appreciates all that you're doing, but you need something outside your work in Larkspur. You need a life outside Larkspur. So I was always encouraging him to do something else outside of Larkspur. He's very athletic, and he does run and exercise, but I wanted him to get more in his life. And we were going to Monterey for a conference, the two of us were driving together, and at that time he had just recently met Kristen, and they were still in the boyfriend-girlfriend stage. And so Kristen packed a very nice box, I don't know, it was nice homemade cookies and fruit and everything else. And as we were driving down there and we were eating from the box, I said, Mike, this box is more than cookies and fruits. I see a lot of love in this. So I kind of left it at that. And just long story short, Kristen is now Mike's wife, and they have a beautiful son, Jesse. And so that blessing that I gave him, that encouragement I pushed Mike to have a life outside Larkspur, worked greatly for him. I'm very happy for him, and he's shaking his head. It looks like it worked good. So another good point, another check mark. And with that, I also appreciate all that you did for the city of Larkspur, all that you did for me during my years here. And Larkspur is such a special place. We love it so much. We just give it all that we have so freely without anybody asking us. So with that, I'd like to thank you and tell you that how great it is to be back here, visiting all. We are family, we are friends. We just don't look at each other as employers. It's always been a great family, and great to be back to see my family again. I love you all, and good seeing you.
Thank you. Good to see you too.
Thank you.
Yeah, we really are family here, Mike, and I hope that you feel that you'll be welcome at any time coming back to parties and get-togethers. You know, as we saw, you know, Dave Wilkinson came by today, and Andre Horn and Matt Mitchell. You know, so a lot of guys from you know, that used to work for us who are now retired came back. So we hope that you will come back as well whenever you have the opportunity. Thank you for your service here in Larkspur, and best wishes to you in your retirement. Okay, I don't know if you're interested in listening to our budget and a bunch of other things, but, you know, we'll be, yes.
Mike, I just want to say thank you for really representing the city and giving the city of Larkspur such a positive community identity with our residents, and for so many years. You've been the first responder for almost 3 decades to public safety incidents, and everybody could always count on you, and you've always been such a friendly, gracious face for the city. So I want to thank you and your family for the many years of sacrifice and all the contributions that you've made here. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments from the council? Okay. Well, thanks again, Mike, and best wishes to you. Okay, next on our agenda for this evening is the consent calendar. If any member of the public or council member would like to pull any one or more items for additional discussion or questions, please raise your hand. Okay, seeing none, I'd like to take a motion for approval of the consent calendar.
I'll make that motion to approve the consent calendar.
Motion, second.
Second.
Okay, motion and second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Consent calendar passes unanimously. Now is the time for our city manager's oral report, and that will be provided by City Manager Dan Swartz.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and council members. I have a theme to the handful of items that I wanted to report to you, and that's partnerships with the public and with private entities. We have a lot of exciting things going on related to that. First, on Friday, I want to invite everyone in the community at noon to the Bon Air Bridge, pedestrian bridge. So this is the bridge that connects the Bon Air Shopping Center to the neighborhood behind it. We're dedicating that bridge on Friday. And of course, as the council knows, that bridge was funded primarily by Greenberry Management Company, the company that manages the shopping center and many of the apartment buildings in the neighborhood above. And we really appreciate they made that happen when the bridge became structurally unsafe. So Friday at noon at the bridge site, please come out. We'll have a little celebration of our new bridge, and it really looks neat. They did a nice job. The second thing is the council accepted the offer of a gift from the Heatherwood neighborhood to help do improvements in their park at your last council meeting. And one of the issues you may recall in the report was that we weren't sure if some grant money would come in to assist with what we're planning to do. I'm pleased to report we just found out we're going to get the grant. that will help us contribute even more money to that project in terms of purchasing some rubberized fall material for the play structures. So that's really exciting because it means that the city money and the community money can be stretched that much farther in doing enhancements for the park. And I want to acknowledge the Public Works staff for pursuing the Cal Recycle grant that's going to make that contribution. I think it's in the magnitude of $26,000 for Heatherwood Park that's going to come out of that grant. So it's really exciting. And my third and final major project is a future project that we certainly hope for public and private support and participation. We're getting a lot of questions about what's happening at the corner of Rose Lane and Dougherty now that the fence has come down. The fence is down because the new home company is going through the final stages of prepping the property to convey it to the city. As folks have been watching that project know, the property served as their staging area for their equipment, and they're getting ready to close the books on the project. And so we are talking with them now about what sort of fence will go up. It will not be a fence that is inappropriate. It'll match the decor of the neighborhood. Our goal is to signal to folks that this is not a park. It's a property with a future purpose. But we also don't intend on it turning into something that looks like an unwelcome prison type environment. So we'll have some sort of nice wooden fence there. It's just getting the look and feel just right. And conveyance is in the works. We're in discussions with the new home company about when that will take place and that we will actually take possession of the property. So that's on the horizon. And then I just want to remind the council and inform the public that the council often has at least one meeting that is dark in the summer, and for this year we will not have a meeting in August, on August 5th, which is your first meeting in August. We will not have a council meeting. And we are working now with the council's direction from the last meeting to schedule town hall meetings around the community facility project. And so I anticipate in the next couple of weeks we'll make an announcement of what that schedule will look like and when those meetings will take place. Turn back to you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments for the city manager? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to the next part of the agenda, which are reports or comments from our council members. Would anyone have anything they need to report on?
I do.
Okay, go ahead.
I recently went to the Marin Catholic meeting regarding their football LED lights, and they talked about how they're choosing lights that will be non-glare, that won't extend out beyond the football field. The attendees were from Greenbrae and Kentfield. They also talked about how they improved their speaker, their loudspeaker. So it seemed like most of the individuals in that crowd were not very pleased about the lights being put in, so they have a long ways to go. So the next workshop will be next month, and they'll make sure that it's announced to all of us. But it's an interesting meeting to attend. And I also met with the principal of Redwood today, and we're trying to figure out how to get cars off the roads. So we talked about putting in a database for the next fall registration, where they're going to go ahead and put in neighborhoods. So the students will put in their neighborhoods, and then we'll try to put together a booklet. So this is for carpooling. We'll put in names and phone numbers, who lives in that neighborhood, so they can easily call one another to carpool. So we hope that's going to be a huge success, along with really promoting bicycles, more bicycle riding to school. So we're slowly getting there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else have a report they'd like to make? Okay, seeing none. Now's the time for public comment. This is a period in which member of the audience can address the council on a matter that is not on our agenda tonight. So if anyone has something, please step up. Yes, Zach.
So I'm part of the Redwood baseball team here at Redwood High School, and we recently won the North Coast Section Championship and the League MCAL Championship. And kind of through our process this season, we've had a lot of great help and leadership from Larry and Mary Grace, kind of working back and giving back to our community. And so to commemorate you guys kind of helping us out, I'd like to present you a framed signed picture from all the kids on our team. Thank you.
He did his job.
Too bad. Well, I guess now I can say some stuff about Zach. You know, I've known him since he was a little kid, but he never played on my team. But he is one of the upcoming stars in this community. He's being looked at by potentially, for sure, college scouts, and I heard potentially some pro scouts. He's a pitcher on a team that went 24-3 this year. Any team at any level in baseball, if you follow it, if you win 60% of your games, you're doing really well. They won 89% of their games this year. Redwood has not won a baseball championship in 13 years. This year they won had the best record in MCALs, followed by winning the MCAL tournament and then going on and winning the North Coast Section Championship. If baseball had a state championship, they would have progressed well beyond there, as this year, according to Max Prep, they're ranked 14th in the state of California.
Great. That's fantastic.
Yeah, and 64th in the nation. So we really have a good team this year. These kids are not graduating yet. We expect to see more out of them next year. So it's great. And they were also instrumental in providing a community service project where they partnered up with Mary Grace Houlihan to provide something like, 120 man-hours over the course of a Saturday to pull weeds and replant and refurbish the entrance to Piper Park. So for anyone watching, thank you, Redwood High School baseball team. Okay, next on our agenda is our public hearings for tonight. The first of the public hearings is on our annual fee schedules.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and council members. I'll keep this very brief on this one. As part of your annual hearings on the budget, we bring you an annual review of the fee schedule. Several years ago, the council's direction to staff was to do a CPI increase annually for the fee schedule. And at that time, it was expressed by the council that your preference was to see modest increases rather than fees stay flat for a while and then jump significantly. So we've continued with that practice. There's a few small tweaks here and there in the other direction. All libraries, for example, across Marin are getting rid of a lot of antiquated fines that they don't use as much anymore. So you'll notice that in the fee schedule. But other than that, it's pretty much a CPI increase across the board. So I turn over to you, Mr. Mayor. It is a public hearing.
Okay, before we start the public hearing portion, do council members have any comments for either the city manager or staff? Okay, I'll open up this portion of the public hearing to any member of the audience who would like to make a comment on this item. If so, please raise your hand. Okay, seeing none, I'll close the public hearing portion and bring it back to the council. And if there's any discussion, anyone would like to start that? Otherwise, I'll take a motion.
It makes complete sense for me. I'm glad you clarified the fee changes that were decreased for library uses, because that was really my only question as to why. But it seems if it's consistent across the county that makes sense for that. The modest increase, I think, is reasonable, and it looked pretty fine to me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Yes, Councilmember Hill.
I'm ready to make a motion, Mr. Mayor.
Sure.
I'll move that the council adopt resolution number 52/15.
I second that motion. And we have a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, that passes unanimously. Next part of our public hearing items is second item, and we have to introduce and waive first reading of Ordinance 1004, which is an amendment to the Rose Garden Precise Development Plan. So it looks like we have Planning Director Neil Toff will make a presentation.
Just to let you know, those are hard copies of the diagram, the exhibit, which is referenced in your report, and also the two diagrams of the change to the footprint, which they didn't print out properly. Their sizing was off. So your hard copy report didn't really, I discovered this afternoon, didn't show them correctly. So those are just, so you have those for reference, but they are on the website correctly in the PDF on the website. So this is an application for a precise plan amendment to the Rose Garden development precise plan. You'll note in your packet there were 2 items of mail that came over from the Planning Commission meeting, and as well you had 4 items of late mail which are on your dais tonight. Staff is asking, we have the New Home Company as applicants are requesting the City Council consider an amendment to the development standards of the Rose Garden Precise Development Plan, specifically to reduce the 50-foot building and impervious surface setback for Lot 27. And this is a 50-foot setback from the top of bank on the east-west reach of Larkspur Creek. This is requested by New Home Company to accommodate an erroneous building location. The home at Lot 27, known as 55 Rose Lane, was erroneously located during the foundation construction. I'll get into that in a minute. Just for some basic background for the council member and staff, or excuse me, members of the public who weren't present during a lot of this history, the Larkspur specific plan was adopted in 2006, and one of the areas of the specific plan was Subarea 3, the Niven property, that was approved for a mix of residential and community facility uses. That was it's a 16.8 acre site. In 2010, the city adopted a precise plan consistent with the CLASP for the Rose Garden for 42 senior condominium dwellings, 8 senior cottages, 6 affordable townhomes, and 29 single-family dwellings, and 6 of those have second units. Included in that was approximately 2.5 acres for parkland and community facilities, which is the subject of our Larkspur Library and Community Facility project. This project has come a long way since then. Permits for demolition and grading were issued in 2011. The first permits for modeled homes were issued in March of 2013. And in October 2013, the city began issuing permits for single-family dwellings on a continuous basis after that time. The building permit for Lot 27 was issued in September of 2014. It was in February 9th of this year that the New Home Company informed staff that the house at Lot 27 was erroneously located. Reportedly, the foundation contractor had read survey stakes incorrectly, and I think the applicants can explain that. This was discovered on January 29th by New Home Company, and as a result, the building was partially located into this required 50-foot building and impervious surface setback. By that point, the home exterior was largely completed, and it was past drywall inspection and closing. So for all intents and purposes, the majority of the house was built. The applicants did subsequently confirm with surveys that no other homes along that stretch had been located within the setback, and in fact confirmed the placement of just about all the homes in the development. Staff subsequently reviewed the matter, discussed it with the city attorney, and we informed New Home Company that the city could not issue final occupancy unless the error is either corrected or the applicants could seek to amend the precise plan. There is some flexibility in the CLASP to amend setbacks through the precise plan process. So eventually, New Home Company submitted a request to amend the standard to accommodate this structure. We've actually written an amendment to the development standards, which is attached in an ordinance format, a draft ordinance format for the council, which would allow a main building to be located up to 48.8 feet from the top of bank of the creek, with a limited portion of the building to be 45 feet, this making up the kitchen nook of the structure. We've drafted these edits to the building and impervious surface setback with reference to the diagram that's attached to your ordinance, and that's what I have put in front of you today. With their application, New Home Company also submitted a report from WRA and Associates assessing the condition of the creek bank, the location of the stream relative to the house, the potential impacts of the project, and we also had the update on the native restoration plan, and it is proceeding successfully. The WRA report indicates that there's a wide floodplain terrace even after the creek bank before you get to center line of creek. It's about 65 feet to center line. So staff has prepared an addendum, another issue raised or another item raised in the WRA report is this does add some very limited impervious surface within that 50-foot setback, but the way these lots are designed, they actually flow back towards the center of the development. So any runoff coming from these impervious surfaces are in fact the majority in these rear yards are getting collected and brought back into the development, and then they proceed out to the holding retention pond at the east portion of the site. So with that, we had provided an addendum based on the EIR and the negative EIR for the CLASP and the negative declarations that were prepared for the precise plan back in 2010. This matter was reviewed by the Planning Commission on June 9th. There were several comments from the public. There was concern with precedent and concern with how an error could occur, what could be done to avoid that. The commission generally agreed with staff's recommendation. It was probably better to complete the project at this point. It had undergone a lot of construction. This was really one anomalous condition. The amount of the intrusion was fairly insignificant. They also agreed that the change would not set a precedent because the location of the house really doesn't benefit the developer or the property owner. It was an error, but it doesn't create any additional square footage for the home, any additional coverage. In fact, it reduces the effective rear yard space because the home is now located closer to the back fence, which is a pretty bright line. That's a 25-foot creek buffer, creek resource buffer, where there's revegetation going on. So the commission did recommend approval of the ordinance with language to clarify that it's not a precedent. The commission, as we noted, also recommended requiring the 50-foot building setback be reinstated if the building is ever totally reconstructed or partially, not if it was partially demoed or damaged by fire. I've discussed this with the city attorney. We haven't provided language to that effect. It didn't seem appropriate to create a development standard that essentially announces itself as a non-conforming condition. It's odd to apply a standard to one building but not another of the same type of building on the site. And I have the city attorneys here to discuss that further if the council feels that's a significant issue. However, we would recommend approval of the ordinance with the language added regarding the rationale for the approval and the basis that it's not a precedent for benefit to the property owners or the developer. And that is attached, and this would be a first reading. This would have to come back for second reading at the July 1st hearing if the council decides to move forward with the ordinance. Do you have any questions of staff?
Anyone have any questions they'd like to ask our planning director? Okay.
Just one question. Just for clarification, if we didn't approve this ordinance change, what would be the implications for the applicant in terms of how this house is managed going forward? Would they be required to take action?
They would need to correct the intrusion into the building setback.
And what would that require?
That there could be a variety of ways they might achieve that. They've looked at various possibilities, and we did provide the architectural plans because what it does show is you have two levels. You have a sort of a kitchen living room on the first level wall with a kitchen nook and a bedroom, and then a bedroom and bath, I believe, up on the second level. So that would have to either get scaled back and the foundation returned so that the building envelope is outside of the 50-foot setback.
But as a practical matter, would it require reconstruction of the structure?
It would require some very significant reconstruction.
That's what
probably.
I was trying to clarify.
Yeah. You know, I think they could probably give you a little better idea of what options might be available for that. But given floor layouts and such, you know, about half the building would have to probably get adjusted from a practical standpoint.
Okay. And adjustment sounds like demolition and reconstruction.
Yeah, some full demolition of the rear portion.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments for Neil? Okay, I just have one question. It could be Neil, it could be Sky who answers this. We probably have about, I think I saw 5 public comments from 4 different people on this particular matter. They were Rose Lane residents. And what I'd like to get a clarification on is that what they are asking for, which is a clarification and also some direction and guidance on how they can improve or use their backyard properties, since you know, we really didn't come out of the class process with anything that was really solid or something you could latch on to as a homeowner, since we were waiting for this development to be finished. If that was not part of the Planning Commission's discussion, nor is it part of our agenda tonight, is that something that we would include in this discussion? If not, would it go back as a matter of process to the Planning Commission to make a recommendation back to the City Council? I mean, they're asking legitimate questions.
Yeah.
But, you know,
well, and we have looking at the late mail, I have discussed this with the city attorney. I think maybe rather than both of us sort of duplicating the answer, maybe I'll let him respond. Sure.
Yeah, thank you, Larry. As I understand it, some residents who are neighbors to the property that's the topic of discussion tonight have submitted a request for the City Council to modify the ordinance that's before you to include a list of structures and equipment, for lack of a better term, that could be placed within the 50-foot impervious and building setback. For a few reasons, while you can certainly hear their testimony tonight, it's not possible for the council to act on their proposal at this meeting. The primary issue is that California's open meeting law requires the publication of an agenda with a general description of each business item to be conducted. And once that's published, the council can't consider beyond what's in the description. And the agenda description for this item is very specific to modifications for Lot 27 in the Rose Garden project. And so additions to the ordinance that would apply to other properties within the project would be beyond the scope of what was in the agenda. Additionally, a different provision of state law says that once the Planning Commission has made a recommendation on a zoning ordinance, and this is a type of zoning ordinance, if the City Council wants to make substantive changes that the Planning Commission did not consider, it has to refer the ordinance back to the Commission to consider those, and then it comes back to the Council. The last thing is, as Neil mentioned, WRA Associates prepared a review of the potential environmental impacts of this change, and that was used to prepare an addendum to the EIR and mitigated neg deck that were prepared for the project. The letter from the neighbors states that most likely what they're proposing would not have impacts beyond those that were explored in the WRA report. But since the WRA report really only looked at what was proposed in the ordinance, we really haven't had any CEQA review of their proposal, and it would be appropriate to undertake the same type of review that was done by WRA for this proposal before making additional changes to the ordinance. So for those reasons, while you can take testimony from the neighbors, it's not something that you can act on tonight. If you wanted to, so the options that I think are either you can delay action on the ordinance in front of you, send it back to the commission, and look at a broadening of the scope of the ordinance, or you can act on the ordinance that's in front of you tonight and direct staff to work with the neighbors and ultimately bring to the Planning Commission an additional ordinance, if appropriate, to consider separately what they're asking for.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Anyone have any questions on that point before I take testimony?
Yeah, just one question on it. If we do decide to move forward with the ordinance as it's proposed, that doesn't preclude addressing some of the concerns that have been raised about use within the creek buffer on a planning basis going forward. I mean, we can do what we've been requested to do in terms of the recommendation on the ordinance, but that precludes nothing in terms of future action, I
That's
assume.
correct. I mean, you can act on anything that was considered by the Planning Commission as part of its hearing process if you wanted to make changes to the ordinance that's in front of you. If you wanted to look more broadly at uses within the setback area, you can do that. This ordinance tonight does not preclude you from taking a broader look at those issues separately.
And just for more clarification, maybe this is for Neil more than anything else, given the character of the things that have been raised in the comments that we've received in terms of additional uses, are those things that, and maybe this is a question for both of you, are those items that could be addressed administratively, or would they require further ordinance changes?
I think it's something, certainly what's requested or what's identified in the request is specifically an ordinance change, so.
No, I understand. I'm talking
there.
more in substantive terms, whether those matters
And
within the scope of what we have as far as an ordinance concern.
Yeah.
Those requests can be dealt with in an administrative way.
Yeah, and I think the problem with the administrative approach is the interpretation of the setback is essentially you see a memo from us to really try to identify a practical application of the setback within these limited rear yard spaces, and what does a building and impervious surface setback mean to a property owner putting in gardening and equipment. So I'm hesitant to provide some conclusive answer, but I think we'd be happy to explore and talk with the neighbors about what avenues would be in front of us. I think so we don't go down the garden path, so to speak, pardon that, but this may well require coming back to the precise plan to provide that clarification, because I think the reality of what was intended by this was rather passive.
And I understand that. And part of the reason that I asked the question, because there seems to be a focus on the memo that was prepared about what's appropriate and what's not appropriate, and that was an administrative assessment, essentially, that was made. And as an administrative assessment, maybe it can be revisited in an administrative way.
Yeah, and there may be a way of having that conversation with the commission as well, sort of doing a process. So that's something we can explore.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions or comments for staff before I take public comment? Okay, I'll take public comment on this item right now. I guess, Brian, you want to start?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council. My name is Brian Olin. I'm with the New Home Company. Good to see many of you again. It's been a long process of developing this neighborhood and doing so since 2011 when we broke ground, as Mr. Toff indicated. First of all, I'd like to take an opportunity to thank staff. During the entire course of this development, we have been working hand in hand with them. It's very convenient how close it is to us, and just completely cooperation between everybody on all the different things that come up during the entire development process. Would also like to thank the community. We know that this is a small town, and that is a big property in that small town, and the disruption of construction over the last several years, I want to thank everybody for their patience, and I'm hopeful that we've done the right thing by trying to contain it as best we could within the development area. So as the development winds out, I think the staff report indicated we have only a few homes left to close. Obviously, we're very proud of the development. I think that the character of the neighborhood is, in our minds, everything that we envisioned, and hopefully everything this council and the community envisioned, blending in with the entire Larkspur community. The reason we're here before you tonight is to humbly discuss an error that was made during the course of construction on this home. There was a staking error that was made, and the way that the error was discovered was during the grading process of installing the yard drains and pulling the final tapes on some of the fencing locations. The measurements weren't coming out right, and we discovered it and brought it to the attention of the city staff. I wanted to walk you through a couple of exhibits to show you what exactly happened out there and kind of graphically describe it. I think you have in your package an exhibit that shows the placement of the home as was intended on the home site, and then the placement of the home as it was built on the home site. And effectively, the way that the foundations are staked, the engineer, we hire a professional engineer, come out and stake the corner of the building, and the stake, in this case, it appears it was read as the corner of the porch. And so the porch is 5 feet, and so starting the building forms from that area and pulling it back resulted in, as you can see, the building being in the exact same orientation as was intended, simply pushed back about 5 feet on the home site. Upon recognition of that, we realized that we were encroaching into the setback zone that was described in the environmental documents and in the original approvals, and that brings us tonight why we're here before you to talk about that amendment. I've also included in here some pictures. Some of the discussion, that came up was how would it look, and is this home site now looking at a place? Exhibit 2 and 3 and 4 wanted to just give you a graphic representation. I'm sure you've all been out there and seen. It's very non-discernible. It doesn't appear that this home is sticking out in the middle of the street or way back hanging over the bank of the creek. It generally is in line with the remainder of the homes. As Mr. Toft indicated, this was not a situation where we were trying to build a bigger home on the home site or trying to gain more FAR on the home site. This is simply a placement of the exact same home as was approved, pushed back on that home site. During the course of the process of going through this amendment with the city, obviously we, as Mr. Toff indicated, we hired a biologist to go out there to make sure that the intent of what was intended for that 50-foot setback zone was still being adhered to, and what impacts that this would have on that. And they made the finding that you find in your documents, including your staff package, that things are operating as intended. What we're asking for you tonight is, as you indicated, that we will be permitted to allow this ordinance to go through as amended and not cause the deconstruction and reconstruction of the entire home. Obviously, we're in a mode. I think we have 2 homes left to close in the entire development, and starting over on a home through a demolition and reconstruction process obviously doesn't serve anyone well in this case. We are here tonight to answer any questions you may have. We have our biologist here as indicated, and respectfully request your approval of this amendment.
Okay, any questions for Mr. Olin? Please step up to the microphone and address the council on that.
I'm Chris Wheaton. I'm one of the residents and the neighboring property to the subject property. And I just have a question. You mentioned the environmental report said that the lots all along there drain away from the creek. I just want to confirm that.
Yeah, I forgot to tell people, we're on TV now, so you need to use the microphone.
Okay, the way that the home sites are developed, there's effectively the flat pad area of the lot, and so from the hinge point where the bank starts to fall down, obviously any rain or any water that would fall would hit that and go toward the creek. That is part of the area that is within the bank of the slope. The remainder of the lot is sloped forward, sloped forward via drainage, and so the way that we set up these home sites, we do plot plans that are processed through the Public Works Department, through the engineering, where there are yard drains set throughout the yard, and those yard drains are connected via a pipe that is directed to the front. And so as water comes either off the roof or into the yard, it collects into these area drains, as we call them, and those are piped out toward the street, and then they discharge toward the street, and then it gets into the master storm drain system for the neighborhood. So that's how the drainage is oriented.
Okay. Oh, yeah, go ahead. If you want to stay up there, if you have a public comment to make, go ahead.
Yeah, just I guess the question I was having about the lots was that really what would apply to the lot that's in question would be true of all the lots. They're all structured with 25-foot setbacks and then a buffer area on the creek. And the area from the fence in the back of our property is 25 feet back, and then everything else is sort of a no-build, no-touch zone. So really, all the information we're talking about tonight, I just want to clarify, we're really talking about our backyards, our small 25-foot backyards. I know the city attorney mentioned that there was that we were talking about the 50-foot setback. Really, most of the information that I was submitting in our request related not to the touch-free buffer, but the adjacent 25-foot buffer that's fenced in. So just to clarify that.
Yeah. Would you like to continue if
Sure.
you had a comment to make tonight?
Thank you. Yeah.
Yes.
So my name is Chris Wheaton. I just moved into the area. I'm representing, we have other Creekside homeowners who wanted to talk tonight, but I was the one who was organizing this. I want to say it's unfortunate the neighbors, I've met them. I'm unfortunate that the house was built back, and I'm a neighbor, and I don't object to it. It is a little bit off what I thought it was going to be, but I have no objection and support this. I guess what happened though is we started to get more information, and we realized that there was 2 different standards being applied to our lots versus what's being applied to lot 27. The situation is that the report that we saw as part of the Planning Commission stated there really wasn't a big environmental impact, that we had drainage coming off of the properties, that any sort of impervious surface, this level of impervious surface of a 5-foot setback was not impacting water quality, wasn't impacting storm drainage, everything was draining off. And so that's one of the reasons I asked the question is, as we've been submitting requests to put any sort of structure back there that is impervious, we've been rejected by the Homeowners Association, who is referring to a memo that the Planning Commission and Neil drafted that basically excluded almost anything that would be impervious. And what we found is that the report that was written then, and the environmental report supported the fact that you could put something, small impervious structure back there. We also found in the report that the CLASP didn't really specifically deny putting structures back that was more of an interpretation of the CLASP. And that we were, any work that all the neighbors that have been trying to do something, I'm not the only one, virtually everybody has tried to put something back there and has been denied based upon this policy memo. And we just thought it was a great opportunity from an efficiency standpoint, rather than you hearing 7 cases coming for you one at a time, that this was a great opportunity to slow down the process by a few weeks and just look at the needs of all of the people on the creek side and not just one that was sort of mistakenly built back into that area. So we're fortunate that it was built back there, because now I think we found that the environmental report is clean. The Planning Commission seems to support that small structures back there don't really impact that. And we would just like the opportunity to be able to submit a plan to the HOA and not have it rejected before it even arrives. We've all been rejected with reports for putting anything back there, as well as not being rejected by the city, because this memo sits out there with denying virtually everything that I'm now asking as an amendment for. So I guess in summary, the clasp doesn't really prohibit us from doing something back there specifically. The environmental report is clean, and we have identical lots that are back there. We're not advocating we do anything with the creekside buffer zone, which I think would be, in question by most people in terms of the plan. I guess the other thing we're looking for is that if this is not going to be included in this ordinance, that we're going to then end up having to incur costs, and that the city consider absorbing those costs, because it will, to start a whole new process up. We have this open. It's an opportunity to make a very simple amendment. I've written it out. I've included it in what I submitted to the city council. All the structures are very small structures, and it would clarify for everybody in the community that's along the creek what we can and can't do, and I think bring down the level of administrative burden on both the Planning Commission and the planning department and you, seeing this keep coming back to you. So I'm hoping that we can kind of all agree and not just meet the needs of one lot owner, but incorporate all 8 people that are on the creek side.
Okay, thank you. Let's see, for Neil, I'm sure this will come back in council discussion. Probably need a clarification of standard D63 on clasp, which deals with the creek setback. So you'll have some time to look that up, or I can just hand it to you. Anyway, if anybody else would like to make a comment, yes.
Question, because we do have the biologist who did the environmental assessment, correct? I just want to get some clarification on the limited focus of the environmental assessment that was done, that it really did focus simply on this particular lot and the particular challenge that the error that you described has created, and make clarification that an assessment that goes beyond that is not really something that you did.
Yes, sir. Thank you for your question. My name is Mark Counens, for the record. I'm with WRA, and I'm an environmental consultant. I prepared the report that was presented in the staff, that the staff presented to you. And yes, to answer your question, so yes, my report was specific to the rear wall and kitchen nook encroachment into the 50-foot setback. So I didn't do an overall review of what would possibly be considered a cumulative impact of all the lots having similar type encroachments.
That, but not even, I assume, no assessment of any of the other proposals that have been suggested about alternative uses on other lots, correct?
That's correct, yeah. So my review was specifically of the as-built condition of the building on lot 27.
Which doesn't preclude any judgment about what those environmental impacts may or may not be. It's just that you didn't look at them.
That's correct.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone else would like to address the council and make a comment on this matter? If so, yeah, please step up and just state your name for the record.
So, good evening. My name is Suzanne Lodge. In December of 2014, my husband and I bought a house at 63 Rose Lane. After 7 years of living in San Francisco and living right next to our neighbors and being renters, we were really happy to move to Larkspur. And also, this city has special meaning to me. My great-grandmother, Emma Lynch, was born here in 1890 on Halloween, and she grew up here. Our first landscape plan to the HOA was denied. We included a portable 3-foot by 3-foot approximately shed. And I'd like to read an excerpt of the HOA letter addressed to me. It said, "The architectural improvement application that you submitted for your backyard landscaping has been denied due to the setback restrictions at the backyard. Attached for your reference is a copy of a memo from the City of Larkspur Planning Department regarding a 50-foot setback from the building creekside buffer that affects Rose Lane, lots 22 through 29, wherein no building or impervious surfaces are permitted. This greatly restricts what we can do with our backyard. We don't have any area, for instance, to put a hot tub that is outside of this 25-foot backyard space. And I'd just like to finish by saying we support giving Lot 27 the green light to go ahead, and these homeowners have been held up for long enough. But I don't think it's fair that one standard's being used for one homeowner and the rest of us are being held to a different standard. Thank you for listening, and anything you could do to consider giving me and my husband fuller enjoyment of our property would be greatly appreciated.
Okay, thank you. Would anyone else like to make a comment to the council on this item? Yes, please go ahead.
My name is Marin Kelly. I'm a new resident to Larkspur. I am delighted to be part of this amazing community you've created, so thank you for that. I'd like to corroborate with both the other Rose Creek residents that have said it just seems what's fair for one property owner should be fair for the rest of us, and ask that the council considers extending the same consideration to all the same property owners. I also would like to ask of the new home company and of Neil, you both mentioned the drainage from Lot 27 and that it drains from the house to the street and the two pipes connect. I would like to question whether or not you have confirmed that those two pipes are indeed connected. What we've witnessed in Rose Lane is that, and there are rumblings of that those pipes are actually not connected, and there is water swelling up, and there's a lot of mosquito larvae, and there's children in there getting lots of mosquito bites. So it's a separate issue that I'll raise, but you both claimed proof, or you're both claiming that those pipes are connected. And do we have, either through the environmental report or anything, for Lot 27? And I would like to ask on behalf of the entire Rose Lane community that all of those are connected indeed.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that's something that can be confirmed. Is that correct, Neil? Yes, Brian. Do you have a question or comment? If you can answer that now, that'd be fine.
Sure. I just want to make a distinction on the term connected. The way that the drainage system works is those pipes come toward the front, and then when they hit an outlet at the front near the walkway, it's called a bubble-up system. And so that is what's shown on the plot plans. It's intended to come down, and then it bubbles up out of that pipe as gravity forces the water forward. So that pipe, the termination of that pipe is not connected into the back of the storm drain system. The way they're designed is to bubble up at that very front. It's called a bubble up. It's a very common engineering design.
So I guess the better question is what's happening on Lot 27 identical to every other home on that street?
Yes, that's the way the homes across that entire stretch are designed the same way.
Okay, thank you. Okay, does anyone else have a question or comment they'd like to raise during this public hearing process? Yes, Mr. Holmes.
James Holmes, Larkspur. Well, this has turned out to be a bit of a can of worms, hasn't it? The Planning Commission stressed that one of their major concerns was that it would not create a precedent, and lo and behold, the matter is being treated, the proposal is being treated as a precedent at the very next hearing on the same matter. So I think this should engender a certain amount of caution in the way you're dealing with this. That raises a couple of issues that I have a concern with. I would just say at the outset, there are two levels of deviations. One is the 1.2 feet off, and the other is the 5 feet off. And to me, 1.2 feet off is ordinary negligence, but 5 feet off is gross negligence. And it seems to me that maybe there should be a different approach toward the 5-foot deviation than the 1.2-foot deviation. If the problem could be mitigated a bit by cutting back on the 5 feet without disturbing the 1.2, that might be a reasonable compromise. But the two things that are of concern to me is I'm troubled by the lack of a middle ground between the very draconian response of requiring a rebuild on the one hand, and what seems to be an unduly indulgent response on the other hand of changing the law to basically ratify a mistake. With regard to the first aspect, it seems to me that the city needs a way to deter the oops defense. It needs to have a way to be effective but not draconian in making sure that people pay attention, in making sure that we don't have this kind of a problem. Courts, the Supreme Court most recently in a patent case, have recognized that if you will, deterring the oops defense is important. And I'm not sure that we have the needed middle ground here. And it leads to precisely the kinds of problems you see. With respect to the second aspect of changing the laws to correct a problem, I think a San Francisco Chronicle article a few years ago put it well. They said, if you encounter legal trouble, no problem, just rewrite the law. That's the approach taken by an engineering firm blocked from working on a rebuild of San Francisco's water program. When I say they've hired Willie Brown to help tweak a state conflict of interest statute that was violated, and the Chronicle editorial concludes, hopefully our city representatives in Sacramento, our elected representatives in Sacramento, will recognize the inherent unfairness of rewriting a law to effectively erase a violation. And so I think that that should be recognized as a problem and a concern here. The problem is not as bad as the Chronicle's situation, but the principle is the same. I think that just about the only thing that justifies this proposal is that there is no advantage to the mistake maker, and that if a mistake maker makes a mistake in their own benefit, then that's an entirely different situation, and that should never be ratified. I think and of course now we see the immediate precedent problem, the issue, the public coming up and saying, well, why aren't I being given the same consideration? And I think that now is a further concern that you should have. So I would urge you to approach this with great care and great caution and with consideration for the larger issues that it raises. Thank you.
Could I just ask a question?
Yes, go ahead.
Before I sit down, James, I share your sentiments almost entirely. What I struggle with is what's the in-between solution that you might suggest?
Frankly, the in-between solution that I would suggest would be, but I haven't looked at the floor plan closely enough, but if it's foreseeable to knock, if it's foreseeable, if it's feasible to knock off the 5 feet so that everything is 1.5 feet, I think that might be a middle ground. I'm not quite sure, that doesn't solve the problem that there is still an encroachment. But I don't know, and perhaps the city attorney could address this, whether or not a partial correction could be accepted by the city in lieu of a complete rebuild on the one hand, or a complete denial, or a complete change in the ordinance on the other hand.
Well, I guess the reason I asked the question because I think even that solution would require us to do something with the ordinance, and maybe the question is really more for the developer to respond to what you're suggesting. My impression from the answer that I got to my question earlier is that, given the way that this building has been constructed, any change, even a lesser change along the lines that you've proposed would essentially require a demolition and reconstruction of the property.
If that would happen, that is indeed draconian. I had the impression that maybe I've heard the references to a 5-foot nook, which gives the impression of a small protuberance, but I haven't seen the floor plan, so I could be wrong. But there remains a real concern and consideration for the lack of a middle ground, and then, of course, the opening up of the entire process again.
I share your overall sentiment. I'm just concerned about the consequences of what the options are.
Yeah. I know that the planning director said there might be other options, and so I don't know what those are. But I think it would be worthwhile to explore them.
If I could, Mr. Mayor, I thought it might be appropriate to enter into the record that most of your senior staff that do development issues, myself, Mr. Toff, Ms. Houlihan, have been on this particular lot numerous times. We've talked to the new home company from the point we were made aware there was this problem. So we're not coming to you having not had a lot of discussions about whether there were in-between options. I just want to enter the record. I want to acknowledge the new home company talked to us about that. They I know talked about it internally. We talked about it internally, and we really sort of were forced to come to you with this situation that we have as we presented it.
And that's my assumption, and that's why I wanted to press the issue a little bit further, because I'm confident that you've already explored what those options might be, and we have the problem that we have.
Councilmember Hill, you had a question?
Assuming that we act on the agenda item this evening and separating the issue raised by adjacent property owners or other property owners on the street tonight, question for the planning director: what would the next step in looking at what they're requesting? I'm assuming that would have to take the form of another amendment. Is that correct? Well, ideally, it would be another amendment. I think our memo was, I'm not sure, there's a number of items that are identified in the neighbor's request that are included that we do allow, but then there are some items such as hot tubs or the kind of connections that can accommodate a lot of sort of outdoor kitchen type facilities and permanent, placed structures and fire pits, which we had indicated in our memo would not be included as pervious surface type of structures. So ideally, we get some clarification in the precise plan if the intent was really to modify the intent of the clasp, and possibly even the clasp itself. And I think the question was raised: what exactly does the clasp say? And it is under the standard of the Natural Resource Protection Standards.
That's D65.
Poly D65. That includes the creek setbacks, which is, that's policy D65, which includes the standard D63 that has setbacks for both the north-south and the east-west reach. And it's just fairly simply stated: no buildings or impervious surface may be located closer than 50 feet to the top of bank. I'm just trying to get an idea of what the next step would be. Should we act on the agenda item this evening? I think in regard to the other issues raised tonight on properties not Lot 27. And the reason I'm asking the question is I want to also understand if there are any the current environmental documents representing this request. Would there be anything that could be reused if found relevant to the other issues raised tonight? There aren't documents that are relative to the specific request that came as late mail. Yes. So that would have to be reassessed and tailored specifically to that request. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. We can continue with our public hearing portion. You look like you want to make a comment. Please do.
Good evening, Mayor Chu, members of the City Council. My name is Heidi Scoble, and although I'm not a resident of Larkspur, I am a resident of the community of Marin, and I find this project and this process very fascinating, and so I was interested, and I've read through all the reports. I'm familiar with the Rose Garden subdivision. I've been out there and in listening to the Mr. Olin's testimony and the testimony from the environmental consultant. I think it's really important to reiterate what's really out there. There is this 50-foot building and impervious setback, but if you actually look at the development plans for the Rose Lane subdivision, or Rose Garden subdivision, you'll see that, and Mr. Olin stated this, that there are these graded pads, and within 25 feet of the 50-foot setback, you have this area that's been graded. All the vegetation has been removed. You have drainage and utility infrastructure back there. It's devoid of any type of, special species or habitat, and you have them all fenced. So for lots 22 through 29, they all have the same constraints. We've heard testimony that the drainage is flowing away from the fenced area all the way back. And this is a great opportunity to address these outstanding items and clarify items that were probably not considered during any type of precise development plan from the get-go. So I understand procedurally there might be an issue regarding tonight's amendment, but there is an opportunity in terms of process whereby the City Council could bifurcate this request and ask staff to bring this back to the Planning Commission for consideration, which would then come back to the City Council for approval without delaying the remaining property owners their right to potentially use their property, as well as saving costs, and there's an efficiency there as well. I think you should consider the WRA report, even though it was specifically provided for one lot, it does apply to all 8 lots in the sense that, again, they all have the same constraints. So that's all I wanted to. Oh, and the other thing that I was going to bring up is that what the Creekside property owners are requesting is actually less of a constraint than an actual physical building with square footage, or like building floor area. The Creekside owners are requesting for minor, furniture, hot tubs, trellises, those types of things. So they're minor and incidental, relatively speaking, compared to an actual physical building structure. So that's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Would anyone else like to address the council on this item? Yes, please step forward.
Hello.
You can pull the mic up a little.
Oh, all right.
You don't have to lean over.
I'll just hold it. How's that?
Okay.
My name is Jordan Moss. My wife and I hope to be residents of Larkspur at some point in the near future. We're actually in contract on the home in question and have been hoping to move for quite some time. I think March was our original anticipated closing date, and we were hoping to be in before the birth of our recent child, and purchased a lot of furniture and made a lot of plans to move, and that's all been on hold. And so I'm very sensitive to everyone's desires for hot tubs and cool backyards, and I think we actually probably want a hot tub too, so I totally understand that. But I would just respectfully request of everyone that the sooner the matter can be addressed, the better. Our lives have been on hold to some extent, and this entire process has obviously been frustrating. Understand that it needs to be dealt with in the appropriate manner. But while we're here and the issue is in front of us and we're in a position to hopefully make a decision one way or another, rather than, I don't want to say confuse 2 separate issues, there seems to be some procedural path to how both of these will be addressed. But again, I would just like to respectfully request that we can move forward as soon as possible, as we would like to get on with our lives, one way or another. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, anyone else? Okay, yes, please step forward.
Hi, my name is Peter Uzelak. I'm a resident on the Creekside of Rose Lane as well. And just a quick comment for you, because I know you've heard all of my neighbors' appeals. But I just want to give the council kind of another example of our need for consistency in this moving forward, this 25 feet behind our homes. I've not requested anything from our HOA in terms of development. My backyard's basically still dirt. I've been there for 9 months. Mostly the reason is at this point is because I've heard all these stories from my neighbors coming back saying they're getting these things rejected. Like one example is an arbor, which would have a it require a very small piece of cement, I guess, to put in a pole, which exists actually in the model homes. When we purchased our home, we went through model homes on the creek side, and they had arbors there, and now we're hearing that these are being rejected. So I just want to give another example of why we really do need to address this and make some consistent guidelines as to what we can do so we can kind of get on with our development of our backyards. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I saw another hand back there. Yes, no? Okay.
Just to clarify, the memo, we've been approving arbor and open trellis structures with footings, so I'm not sure whether that's misinformation or not.
Say that again, please, Neil.
Part of this memo, part of what we do approve or allow are garden features, arbors, open arbors and trellises with footings. So now it may be depending on whether they have a roof structure or something like that. I don't know, and then also there are setback requirements for accessory structures. So the height relative to the fence can play into that as well. So it may be a certain type of design wasn't approved. I don't know.
I have a question.
Yes.
So Neil, do we have a list of what a homeowner can do back there?
Yeah, I think it was part of the late mail. There was a PDF which was attached to the late mail. So I'm hoping that's up on your dais.
Okay.
But which has a list which allows porous concrete.
I have that list. I thought that was from okay.
Yeah.
All right, I'm looking at, so hot tubs are allowed?
Hot tubs are not allowed.
Are not allowed?
Hot tubs are not allowed. Swimming pools, spas, hot tubs, permanent elements constructed on slab footings, counters, outdoor kitchenettes, things like that. We kind of had to draw some lines on what would be considered pervious and what was kind of impervious structure. So light garden structures, trellises, arbors, freestanding fence, raised planters, movable furniture, architectural parts, raised planters, portable fire pits, fireplaces, portable furniture and structures, all permitted.
I have the copy of the memo he's talking to. If you guys want copies of it, it was attached to mine.
We have
it.
it.
You got it?
Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Just one quick comment is that when I structured this, there was things that were allowed and not allowed, and I try to keep those that we're asking to be allowed to be smaller structures that wobe any more square footage than what has happened with lot 27. So, in other words, a swimming pool was on there. I didn't ask for that in the amendment because that would be a pretty massive development in that 25-foot setback area. So they're all like 7-by-7 structures or smaller structures that would be comparable in fairness to what has been given to lot 27 and has already been approved in the environmental study.
Just one quick, Mr. Olin, did you have a, oh, yeah, Kevin?
Just before we leave Neil off on that, regardless of the substantive aspects of the memo and the guidance that's been provided, one of the things that I've been hearing expressed in the public comment tonight are concerns about how the homeowners association conducts its business in reviewing requests. And I just want to make it clear that you're acting in your capacity as an official or an agent of the city, and the homeowners association is an independent entity, and they're not subject to your control or direction. They do what they do, and it may be based in part on their interpretation of ordinances and guidelines and guidance that comes out of the city, but they are an independent entity.
Right. Well, and I think on that subject, the CC&Rs that had to be approved by the cities and were effective for the sale of the properties, and that basically are the governing documents for the homeowners association, include numerous references to the restrictions that are in place by the precise plan, including this setback. There's a number of other things that are also were required by the conditions of approval, and not just implemented on the plans and the construction, but also through the CC&Rs, which had to be approved by the city. So the CC&Rs should be consistent with the city's zoning regulations and policies, and they are, and they include this reference, both the graphic that you see is actually the graphic from the CC&Rs of the two setbacks. And they're clear about, they have just very similar language about no building or impervious, other buildings or structures that create impervious surfaces. They're actually simpler than our memo. I mean, our memo tries to, I think, provide a little more flexibility about what can go into a rear yard space than just saying nothing impervious, absolutely. But that is we were instrumental in working with New Home Company to make sure the CC&Rs and the disclosures represented all these rules and regulations as well.
No, and I understand that. I'm just trying to clarify the distinction in terms of administrative decision or decision-making, that the Homeowners Association is not part of the city of Larkspur. They are an independent entity, and they represent independent interests. They do what they do in light of what they have to work with, but you don't tell them what to do.
No.
Can I just add a point that I think all the people would agree that they are telling them what to do. Like the HOA is going to the city of Larkspur, it's referring to this memo, and they're basically saying this memo says we can't do it, and they're treating this like it's law. And I'm told by Todd Ziesing and the head of the Planning Commission that this, like, we need to go through the city council to then codify this, to clarify it, because we're getting mixed messages. The messages we are getting is referring to this as a legal document by the HOA, and the HOA is working very closely, as you know, with the city of Larkspur to make sure everything goes smoothly, and we are getting rejected for virtually everything we want to do in our backyards that is non-permeable.
And I appreciate that completely, and I just want for the public's benefit a clarification on lines of authority about how decision-making gets addressed. And I understand exactly the point that you're making, that they may be using memos or whatever it is that they use to tell you the basis for their decision-making.
Yeah, we're getting all rejection letters saying we're doing this because the city of Larkspur specifically said in a memo by Neil Toth that we're not allowed to do this. So I'm just saying that's why we're here today. So thank you.
I understand. Thank you.
Mr. Olin, you had started a comment.
Sorry, I hate to derail it and kind of I just wanted to clarify for the record the issue on the drainage. The way I described it, I just got a chance to talk about with Mary Grace. The way that the drainage is designed on all those lots is the same. That was the point of the message. I do need to confirm with Public Works how the discharge system works from where it terminates at the curb.
Okay, thank you. Okay, anyone else like to make a comment on this item? All right, seeing none at this point, I'm going to close the public comment period and bring it back to council for discussion. I think the first thing we need to clarify is whether we will continue with the one item that's for us tonight, because we do have to make a decision on that. Now, one of the things that we can say is that we might want to continue it. That's always an option. But kind of the way I hear it from staff and the way I interpret it, whether we make a decision on lot 27 tonight or not, all the issues, and legitimately so, that were brought up by the neighbors and other homeowners on Rose Lane are still items that need clarification and discussion, and that discussion sounds like it went beyond just an administrative level, which means that it requires Planning Commission discussion as a recommendation back to the City Council. Now, did everything I say right there encapsulate it properly and correctly?
I think I would amend what you said slightly to say, presumably, what will happen is that we will go back to the Planning Commission. I mean, this is pretty typical stuff for new development. You have rules that were written before anything was built. Now you have something built, and there are rules you need to talk about again. It may be we can handle them administratively. It may be they have to go to the Planning Commission. it needs to be its own conversation with its own process, and your staff's more than happy to engage in that process.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that's real difficult, I mean, it's been, 8 years since we last looked at class, or at least Councilmember Hilmer and myself. And the language there isn't very subjective. I mean, if you look at Standard 63, it's pretty explicit about not allowing any impervious surfaces inside a 50-foot buffer. You know, it's been a long time. I'm not sure if that's what was intended. I know for sure the first 25 feet, we're supposed to have nothing in it, because in part of that language it says, you know, something about not having any human or animal, you know, effectively touch on that. And that, I don't think, was intended to be for people's backyards. It was certainly intended from the fence down to the top of the creek. So, you know, right there, we just through recall and the practicality of it, you know, we'll need some clarification on that alone, because the way it reads right now sounds like you can't even go in your backyard. So, you know, I think that it raises a good question in terms of what people, you know, are asking for in terms of what they want to put in their backyard, without getting into the discussion about, you know, precedent, because, you know, the council can, each member can make comment about that. I'm just saying that, you know, I think this needs to go back to the Planning Commission at a minimum.
The issues raised by the neighbor.
By the neighbor.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So thank you very much for being here, all of you, and it's a real pleasure to meet new residents to Larkspur, and hopefully you come to more council meetings. You can see we do a lot of different things, and we also have a real baseball recognition and small town parties sometimes too. This is a very personal matter in many ways to many of you, and I completely appreciate that. I see this as really two issues that are separate but intertwined. We really have to examine Lot 27 and this specific intrusion that's happened there. And I would agree with Mayor Chu that the concerns that most of you have raised about re-examining this 25-foot backyard are also very important issues that I think I would like to have us further examine in a separate discussion, because that really involves a more complex analysis of what CLASP entailed. And it was really thought through many years ago, before anybody occupied these spaces and there were homes even built. But I think you have really presented some legitimate concerns about the use and enjoyment of your property that I would agree with Mayor Chu we need to continue to look at. But piggybacking it onto this is probably not the appropriate way to really vet those issues, because I'm looking at Lot 27 as a specific problem with this intrusion that's happened there, and you all are presenting other concerns and needs that also need to have a proper understanding and vetting by others. So I'd really encourage us to move that forward in another context with planning, if we can do that. As far as this Lot 27, I mean, I'll wait and we'll talk about it a little bit more then.
Thank you. Kevin, would you like to make comment?
I share what Catherine just said about our appreciation for all of you coming tonight and raising these concerns and sending your emails and communicating to us about that. And I don't think there's probably anyone up here or in this room that isn't sympathetic to the concerns that you have about the need to be flexible and how you manage your property. I don't think there's any doubt about that. The concern that I have here, which I think Catherine articulated to some extent, but I want to take it a little bit step further, and it kind of goes back to what James was really talking about. The reason we're here today was because of a mistake that was made, an error that was made in the construction of one particular house. And I'm frankly a little loath to be rewarding the developer for having made that mistake. I don't want to characterize it as some level of negligence or however it is that, James, you were trying to articulate when you made your comments. I don't think that really gets us very far. But the bottom line here is this is a mistake. It shouldn't have happened, and we probably wouldn't be here today, at least having this issue teed up in the way that it is, had that mistake not been made. My concern is more, how do we respond to that mistake? We've got a homeowner here who is anxious to move into their home. They were waiting to move in until they had their child. That didn't happen for them, and now they're still anxious to move in. And I don't think that they should be penalized for that by some additional process that we might go through in order to address these legitimate other concerns. So my sense is that, you know, unless and until we have a separate process that can be done, I think probably administratively by and large, but maybe not. There may be aspects of it that can't be. And there may be aspects that require Planning Commission review, and there may be aspects that will require these issues to come back to us. I don't know. I don't want to prejudge that. But without a thorough assessment and consideration of these proposals that apply to all of the homeowners in this neighborhood, not just the ones who have expressed the concerns, but everybody, without an independent process where those are legitimately and properly considered, I don't think we should leverage what is, again, a mistake by the developer in this case, into an opportunity to do other things. So my inclination is to encourage a process that goes forward in the future where all of these concerns about your rights and abilities to use your property in an appropriate way are considered and responded to. But I don't think this is the way to get there. So my strong preference is to adopt the staff's recommendation to move forward on that basis.
Ann?
Why don't you go ahead, Dan?
Okay, Dan, sure.
Okay, all right. Thank
Either
you.
way.
Either way, right. Thank you for being here. I'm happy you are, and I think it really needs to be dealt and discussed further, and it needs to be a written rule. So I think all of what you say is legit, and there needs to be a definition of what you can and cannot have, more than just this memo. So I think you're on the right path. And with that, I also, with Lot 27, you need to move in there. So I'm ready to make a motion, but I want to hear what Dan has to say. But I'm excited for you, and welcome to Larkspur, everyone. It's a wonderful town.
I'm ready to hear the motion, Mr. Mayor.
Good.
Well, at this point, if we just stay with what we started with, we're making a precise plan amendment that will allow for the modifications as recommended by staff to have those adjustments in the creek setback. I don't know if the motion will require any specifics since it's already in the staff report.
When just this is an introduction and waiver.
Yeah, introduction and waiver.
Yeah.
Right, sorry. Yeah, introduction and waiver of first reading.
Does that even require a motion?
Yes.
It does.
Okay.
Okay. How are we going to make that?
I'd be happy to make that
All
motion.
right, we make that motion.
I'd like to move that we proceed with the introduction and waiving of first reading of an ordinance amending the Rose Garden Precise Development Plan and Ordinance Number 972. I think this is PD-PREC/DR 15-16. Is that correct? So moved. Second?
Just to clarify, Mr. Mayor, this is introducing and waiving the first reading of Ordinance 1004.
That's correct.
Did I mistake? I'm sorry.
Great, I'll second that.
We had a motion on the floor, so I guess you would have to withdraw it or amend it.
I amend according to the clarification that Councilmember Hilmer just made.
Okay, so we have a motion, then I'll take a second.
And the seconder will accept that amendment.
Okay, thank you. So, motion and second, all in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, yes, and the city manager has a comment.
Two comments for the council. One is we'll reach out to the neighbors tomorrow, so Mr. Toff will get that process going. The second thing is I feel like I need to channel Tom Bradner's, your mosquito abatement district person who comes every year and reminds us that if you have a mosquito problem, they will come for free and they will figure out why you have a mosquito problem. So I really encourage you to go on their website and put in a request, and within a week a staff person will come out from the Vector District and at least figure out why there's a bunch of mosquitoes there. So that's the Marin Sonoma Mosquito Abatement District. And our rep comes every year and he says, not enough people, call us because it's free. So.
And they have a great website also,
Yeah.
don't they?
Or that's a vector control district.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I clarify, was that vote unanimous on the motion?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, well, I'd like to thank all the neighbors from the Rose Lane development. Welcome to Larkspur, as was mentioned by Councilmember Morrison. It's good that you can come and we can put some names to some faces. I would have suggested that staff contacted you, but I guess our city manager has already volunteered to do that first thing tomorrow. So hopefully we look forward to getting the clarification you need and getting that resolved as quick as possible so that you can make your home feel like home. Okay, thank you for coming tonight. Yeah, you're welcome to stay for our budget. Nobody likes to stay. Yeah. Okay, we're going to take a 5-minute break here. Thank you. Resume our council meeting tonight with the third item on our public hearing agenda, and that we can probably take them together if you'd like. We have third and fourth item are the budget, which has several resolutions, and also our capital improvement program.
Okay, we'll be happy to do that. So we'll open a public hearing on both items, 7.3 and 7.4. So that's your fiscal year 2015-16 budget and your capital improvement program. Essentially, with the resolution that adopts the budget, you do adopt the capital improvement program for the year because we program those numbers into the budget. And then by accepting the report, you're accepting our projections about what the program will look out over the next 5 years and what we think that effect will be. I did want to note that there was a typo in the resolution, and the resolution numbers did not actually appear correctly in the agenda itself in the individual items. The resolutions are properly noted, but you'll be asked at the end of this public hearing to consider adopting resolutions 53, 54, 55, 56, 57, and 58 this year. And you'll need to take each one of those resolutions up separately. So just a note when we reach that point, Mr. Mayor. Did I count that incorrectly or correct? I got that right.
Yeah, those numbers are correct.
Okay.
Great.
Got it. Thank you. Okay, so this is our fourth meeting and last meeting, hopefully, on the a budget for next year, our fiscal year running from July 1st to June 30 of each year. And through the course of the previous 3 meetings, we've attempted to give you an overview of how the city's doing financially, what trends we're observing, and some of the specific policy challenges that we're facing in this budget year in particular. I'm pleased to report that we are presenting to you this evening a balanced budget. But more so than any year since I've been here, we had to do some juggling to make that budget balanced. And we've talked in our previous meetings that we were particularly constrained this year by the decision by the California Public Employees Retirement System to create a 20-year payment program to essentially catch up for the losses they experienced during the recession. We are paying over the next 20 years roughly $500,000 each year to CalPERS as part of that program. Nearly every agency in the state is paying some significant sum of money over the next 20 to 30 years to deal with that issue. And as a result, we did have to propose to you some shifts of money that we've never proposed before, and we've discussed those quite a bit, particularly relying on what we've perceived to be some flexibility now in our bridge fund. And as we start to know what the actual cost is going to be for the Bon Air Bridge, we're starting to understand what monies are in there now and what monies should be available as that project moves through its process to completion. So we're asking you to give some thought to the use of money and scheduling of money relative to the bridge fund and its use in other areas. I'm probably most concerned, you see in my narrative, you've heard me speak over the last few meetings, that we're starting to note in Larkspur a slight downward trend in sales tax. And I just keep mentioning that because we enjoyed a significant surge in sales tax over the last few years. And I'm not talking about Measure C, I'm talking about in the base sales tax, we saw some significant growth. As you know, I've attributed many times that growth to 2 main sources. One is the significant growth in Larkspur Landing of Marin Country Mart, and the other is in Larkspur Landing of the office park being occupied by businesses that do business with other businesses, and they're doing sales to other businesses and generating sales tax. It's in that second category that we're seeing some of this leakage now of revenue. We're hoping it's a very minor trend. We're keeping a close eye on it because if we start to revert back to our historical trend line and it's not sort of a permanent growth that we've experienced, we're going to need to start planning accordingly because we've started this year and last year, we've started to rely more and more on that new source of revenue. So that's something that your Finance Director, Kathy Orm, and I are watching very closely. We did something we don't normally like to do. We certainly would. It's not our practice. We did bring this budget to you without an official endorsement from the Measure C Oversight Committee, who's supposed to make a recommendation to you based on our staff recommendation. The reason we did that is at our last Measure C meeting, staff was really wrestling with how to deal with the capital improvements we need to do at City Hall and at our 2 fire stations, and we at the time felt we probably would have to ask the council to release some Measure C money into that program. And we thought we'd ask you for 10% of Measure C revenue to go into those building issues. The committee felt strongly we should try to only release 5% into the building program and keep the road program going at 95% of Measure C revenue. Mary Grace Houlihan, your Public Works Director, and I went back and forth for a good couple of weeks, right up to the deadline to give you this budget, and felt we had found a way that we could meet that policy hope that the Oversight Committee had. And we really rely on their feedback as representing the feedback of the public. And the sentiment's very strong at the committee that the public's #1 issue with the Measure C money is roads, and that we should put as much as possible into roads. So we kind of rescheduled a few projects. We played with this or that in a way we felt was appropriate for what we're trying to accomplish in all our capital needs, and we felt we could free up some of that additional revenue elsewhere so that we could meet that 95-5 preference that the Measure C committee has. So we do need to go to them and officially get a vote from them that blesses that, but I feel pretty confident based on what they said to us at the last meeting that this is what they would like to see in the budget. The only other point I want to make that we haven't over the last several meetings before I turn it over to you, council members, is that it's getting a little tougher to meet our our general fund reserve policy. You have a policy that will hold 25% of the general fund in reserve. We've always comfortably met that, but this year we have 2 competing factors that are making it a little more challenging. One is our budget keeps growing. We're getting healthy revenues and we're putting those revenues to work for the community. But as a result, the number that constitutes 25% of the general fund grows each year because we're doing that. So that's challenge #1, and challenge #2 is we're trying to play some catch up in some of our other areas, and one of the other areas is ensuring that our insurance fund is where it needs to be. So this year we've proposed some excess funds be directed into insurance. And as a result, we're just meeting that 25% goal. We are meeting it in this budget, but that's how we've done it and why that margin's tighter than it's been in years past. Overall, though, I want to acknowledge publicly the hard work over the last month that Kathy Orm, who's your Finance Director and City Treasurer, has been doing to make this budget work. I want to acknowledge the work of all the department heads to hold their budgets as flat as possible while not only delivering the services at the same level or higher than the previous year, but finding ways to potentially improve their infrastructure and services without constraining the general fund. If I have one overall compliment and sense of pride for the direction we've taken in the last 5 years since I've been with you is I think we are using the general fund in a much smarter way. I think we are taking the tax dollars of the public and we are finding ways to put them to use on the ground. And it's not that we weren't doing that before, but I think with some creativity on the part of department heads and on the part of all the staff, we're finding new and better ways to maximize the use of the dollars. And I really feel we're returning a tremendously high investment to the taxpayers in this budget in terms of performance. So I'm very pleased to present it to you this year. As you know in my budget message, there are those things I've marked that I'll be watching and probably telling you about all year. I'm available to you. Ms. Orm is available. If you'd like now, Mr. Mayor, Ms. Houlihan can give you a brief overview of the capital improvement program, or I can answer some questions about the budget document.
We'll first see if council has any questions about the budget documents. Yes.
I don't have a question. I just have a compliment to pay to you, Kathy, for the hard work that you've done on this budget and making it work, and to you, Dan, as well, and to keeping it within the parameters that we've set for you, which I appreciate are challenging, but you are both to be very much congratulated for that effort.
Thank you.
Agree.
Yes.
I agree.
I'd like to. I'm going to echo that with just one other thing that I've noticed in looking back at budgets 5-6 years ago. The clarity in this budget and the detail is so much better than it was 6 or 7 years ago, which with descriptions of every line item and all different things that really, I think the public, if they have the interest in reading about Larkspur's budget, will have a lot of clarity as to where the money goes, what comes in and where it goes, very specifically in ways that we haven't had before. And I know that takes a lot more work, but it really helps when someone wants to look through each department to see the specifics. It's here. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, if I could, because we appreciate those accolades, and Ms. Orm deserves all the credit for this document, but I do want to acknowledge that a few years ago the council made one of those decisions. It's just not that interesting or exciting for the public, but that's to spend a lot of money to improve the financial software. And as brilliant as Ms. Orm is, you gave her a tremendous tool that's helping the city run much more efficiently than it did in the past. And I just want to acknowledge that, because it's not always the exciting public policy decision to buy software packages.
Thank you. And thank you, everyone, for your comments. Yes, we can now turn over to Public Works Director Mary Grace Houlihan for the Capital Improvement Program.
We're keeping it short this time. No slideshow.
No slideshow.
Every time she sits down, I think there's slideshow.
So I would like to just identify a couple items in this capital improvement budget that last year we had identified as critically unfunded projects. There were 4 last year. One was deferred maintenance at City Hall, deferred maintenance at the fire station next door here on Magnolia, and the deferred maintenance on the fire station on Berry Way, and also the Bon Air pedestrian bridge. So I'm very glad to report one of those is actually done and constructed, and that was through a community team effort with Greenberry Management, so that was fabulous. We've also been able to bring forward and recommend funding for some of the deferred maintenance at the 3 city buildings, which is really critical and important. So I'm looking forward to being able to make some modifications to keep these buildings in service, safe and healthy for all those working in them and those visiting these facilities. We also have several other park improvements, which is exciting for Larkspur, that we're applying the Measure A dollars. We're also having some benefit out of the Bon Air Bridge mitigation to help bring those park improvements, kind of revitalize some of our parks that are very special to the community. So those are key elements that I'd just like to highlight in this CIP. We also have our pavement project, which is very exciting, that we'll be able to keep that moving forward and enhancing and revitalizing our pavements here in Larkspur. So I'm happy to answer any questions on it. I am keeping it short tonight. I think we've gone through this a couple of times, but I'm happy to answer questions on any of the CIPs that are proposed.
And if I could, Mr. Mayor, I know I acknowledge this in, I think, meeting 3 of the 4 meetings we've had in the budget, but it's pretty amazing to think how far we've come. There are not general fund dollars in the CIP. That's a big difference from when I got here, when the CIP was heavily funded by the general fund. So that's a real testament to the work of the Public Works Department.
Thank you, and acknowledge good work. Any questions or comments for Mary Grace before we take public comments? Okay, seeing none, we have one member of the audience here. Would you like to make comment? No? Okay. Good, we'll close the public comment portion for the budget and the capital improvement program, bring it back to council. If there are any discussion items or guidance for staff, now's the time to do that. Otherwise, we'll take each of these resolutions in the order that they appear.
I just had one question for Dan on your introductory comments about the trend on the sales tax issue.
Mm-hmm.
Are those businesses that are actually moving out of the office park?
It looks to me from the first cut of data I've received from our sales tax analysts that some of it is departures, whether that's the business is closed or they left. I need them, once I start to see that, they come out and meet with me, and that'll be one of the questions. Do you see this in somebody else's sales tax base now, or did this business close? And they'll be able to figure that out for us. There are one or two businesses that I think when they started up had a big surge of revenue, and looks to me like for whatever reason they're not performing at that level anymore. I've looked pretty closely at a couple of them because it was a nice new source of revenue, and I have a suspicion that they're businesses who rely on contracts that may have expired, and they're probably in the pursuit of new contracts, so we may then see them have another surge in revenue.
So we're still figuring that out.
It's a new area for us, and we don't have trend data, so we're entirely reliant on our consultant to get into these databases, and it's tricky for us because a lot of the data is proprietary, so I can't easily access it.
Right.
I need them to help me.
I guess if part of the phenomenon is folks moving out, and that tax base is shifting to other jurisdictions, if there's anything that we can do to support you in your effort to try to stem that going forward, I think we would all be happy to play whatever role we can.
I'll tell you what the best thing we have going for us really is, because I've been studying the Larkspur Landing area quite a bit lately, and we have a lot of small operations, or we have a lot of executive offices of larger operations out there, and the reason they're there is we're a great place to live, and those folks don't want to commute anymore, and they have the position within their businesses to locate out there. In some of those cases, that's producing revenue for us, and in other cases, it's producing jobs for us, and either way, that's a win. But it's a real testament to our entire package as a community that I think we've seen a huge gain in executive representation out at Larkspur Landing.
Well, again, anything we can do to support the effort to keep that going, we'll do.
Okay, I just had one suggestion on the reserve, and it's not for this year, but think about for next year. Whenever you have a single item that is disproportionately affecting the composition of your revenue, especially since you mentioned there was capital improvement program stuff. Okay, the other items are more affected by the need for the reserve, which is budget stabilization, because you're going to do CIP just based upon what money you raise from grants and stuff. So if you exclude that and come up with a different percentage that covers whatever you're trying to accomplish from the reserve, then it doesn't force you into having a whole bunch of projects we're getting funded for and then feeling like you have to meet the same 25% level. Otherwise, you end up having to set aside a quarter of what you get.
I understand what you're saying. That's a good suggestion. We can work on changing the policy to reflect that. That's a good suggestion.
Okay, thank you. Right, if there are no other questions or comments, the first resolution is 5315, which is to adopt our investment policy.
So moved.
Motion, second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor say aye.
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 Okay, thank you, that passes unanimously. The second one is 5415, which is establishing our appropriation limits for the fiscal year 2015 and 16.
So moved.
A second.
Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, that's unanimous. 5515, our general fund reserve policy for the fiscal year 15-16.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. And Now you gave me one with small print.
You want my
I move
glasses?
Resolution 5615.
Okay, and that's establishing positions for the competitive services and assigning salary ranges.
Second.
So move.
Oh, I thought it was moved. I thought it was moved.
There's been a motion and a second.
Okay, so second, I guess, what, Ann? All right, all in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, 5715, Lark's City Council approving the repayment terms between the general fund and the bridge replacement fund for fiscal year 15-16.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, 5815, this is the big one, adopting the budget for fiscal year 15-16.
So move.
Motion, second?
Second.
Second. All in favor, say aye.
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 All right, we got through that. And this was a 4-meeting process. Again, I'd like to thank Finance Director Kathy Orm and her staff, and Public Works Director Mary Grace Houlihan for the CIP portion, and of course, City Manager Jan Swartz for all his comments and his participation in this.
And just an addendum to that, and everyone in the city staff who participated in this budget process, all the department heads who labored hard to find money that could be reflected in this budget, they please convey our congratulations and thanks.
Okay, thank you. And we just have one more quick item, which is just a cleanup item. When Vice Mayor Way and I made the recommendations to council about a month and a half ago for reappointments of our boards and commissions, we neglected to reappoint Judy Kirschbaum to the Marin County Commission on Aging, because that's a 3-year term, so that was kind of odd, and totally forgot about that one. So that's what's before us on the one business item tonight. If the council concurs with our recommendation to reappoint, I'll just take a motion in a second.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, motion, second.
Second.
All right, motion and second to reappoint Judy Kirschbaum to the Commission on Aging. All in favor, say aye.
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 All right, thank you, everyone. That was a good meeting tonight, and we can adjourn till the next time, which is July 1st. So the time now is 8:40 p.m. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.